going on, everybody? This is the Daily Fantasy Show brought to you by DFO. It is Wednesday, December 13th. I am Josh. We have a 4-game slate tonight. Nothing overly exciting. The GPPs are okay. Nothing to get super excited about, but there's enough games for me to go live. 4-game slate. It's weird. The only home team that's favored tonight is the Islanders. The Rangers, the Bruins, and the Predators are all favored on the road. So, maybe using some of the home teams could be a tad contrarian. Let's pop on in, and we'll go over the 4 games. If you have questions, try to keep the questions. If I'm going over a certain game, have your questions specific to that game. If not, I'll get to them at the end. Avery's grandparents are over, so he won't be bothering me. So you have my full undivided attention for this 4-game slate. So let's get to the first game of the night. We have the New York Rangers traveling to Ottawa to face the Senators. The Senators are on a back-to-back after losing to the Bruins last night. It's going to be Henrik Lundqvist against Craig Anderson. He does add spunk, but man, I have to multitask and it gets tricky sometimes. Senators are on a back-to-back after losing to the Sabres last night. They look like they're ready just to give up this season. The Rangers are a small favorite on the road. AV hasn't spoken yet, so the lines that I have are the lines that DFO has, which are the ones that AV started the game with, hit the last game with, which is Desharnais, Kreider, and Buchnevich, Hayes, Nash, and Fost, and Miller, Grabner, and Zook. He did end the game with Miller, Nash, and Buch, but that was because the Rangers were absolutely god-awful through 2 periods last game, and I'm not sure he's going to go back to that. He's kind of a creature of habit, except for, moving Buchnevich down to the 4th liner. But actually, you know what? Usually after they struggle, he might mix it up, but until I hear anything, I can only give you what I know based off of what I see. So for me, in terms of the Rangers, I probably go, the 3rd line is still going to be my favorite line as a whole. Miller, Zook, and Grabner. And then Hayes and Nash is a good combo. I like the top line if you leave Davey out. You can use them with McDonough, with Shattenkirk, or even Brady Shea. As it's constituted right now, if the Rangers lines stay what they are, I don't have too much interest. If they do go back, if AV does, mix it up and does go Miller, Buch, and Nash, that line is very interesting to me. I really like that combo. And I think, Nash is a good cash play. Nash and Zook are probably good cash plays. We'll just see what AV says when he talks around 5:15. But as it's constituted, my interest is fairly low in the Rangers tonight. I don't mind using, if you need someone like Brady Shea as salary relief in the defenseman, that works. McDonough. But if it came down to it, I'd be using the 3rd line, then a mini on the 2nd line, then a mini on the top line. But if he mixes it up, maybe I'll put out a little heads up on Twitter about how I feel about it. On the Ottawa side, it's a back-to-back. They are home, but until, I don't know. if you want to go down narrative street, this is, where the Rangers season ended in the playoffs last year. So maybe it's not just another game for them, but I really want to see different lines before I get super excited. Zibby's still out, and the Rangers played so bad last game, it doesn't really excite me. On the Ottawa side, same deal. I mean, they're on a back-to-back. I think there's better spots, but they are an underdog at home, and people are really soured on them. So they could be in a very contrarian spot tonight. The problem is, they can't score with a beach ball right now. If you want to use Brassard, the Brassard line, okay. I mean, I don't even know what the lines are going to be. They mix them up in-game so much. Yeah, I watched the first period of that Buffalo-Ottawa game, and I almost, had to retire because that was just the most brutal period of hockey I've ever seen in my life. It's so bad. Yeah, the third period was okay, but, Brassard, I think, is on with Stone. I don't know. Watching the first period, none of the even strength lines came out 2 shifts in a row. So, who knows what Guy Boucher is doing? I hope they fire him. Not that that's going to, change the atmosphere in Ottawa. They really need to, just rebuild. But it's just, I understand if you want to use, a Mark Stone, a Mike Hoffman, a Derek Brassard, even a Matt Duchene, who's really cheap. But, yeah, it looks good on paper. The Rangers are a tad funky defensively. Ottawa is, let me pull up the odds real quick. They opened as a plus 105 underdog. It's moved to basically a pick 'em, but, I think, if you're going to compare the Rangers to Ottawa ownership, Ottawa's definitely going to be on the lower end. I mean, the game is a 5.5 over under, which is the normal line, but, Ottawa 1 does look good on paper. They're going to be contrarian tonight if you want to go there. I understand your reservations. If you don't, I think a lot of people have the same reservations I do, which makes them a pretty decent GPP play if you're, mass entering. So if you're throwing 20 lineups, it would make sense to have some exposure, a little bit of exposure to Ottawa, as it is a short slate and they will be contrarian. Erik Karlsson is back up above 6,000, but still super cheap. He hasn't really been doing much. You want to use CC at 3,100, okay. Don't really have too much interest there. From a goalie perspective, Lundqvist at 8,000, I think is in play. Senators have had trouble scoring, so there's only 8 goalies tonight, so where are you really going to land? A lot of these matchups are not oh, let's lock this goalie in. There's none of those tonight. I mean, really, maybe Pekka Rinne is probably going to be the popular one. Who's my favorite Rangers defenseman? Depends who you're using. I mean, if you're using the third line, I think you can go McDonough or Shea. If you're going the top 2 lines, I think you can go Shattenkirk. But for me, I'm probably going to pay down for Shea. Yeah, Karlsson's been really bad lately. I think he needs a change. I think Ottawa, the whole team needs a change of scenery. But Craig Anderson 7,300 is cheap. If the Rangers don't mix up their lines, I think maybe Craig Anderson is in play in GPPs. But this game as a whole just really doesn't excite me. So for me, I'm probably gonna almost full fade this game unless AV comes out and says, these are my new lines and there's something really appealing. But again, the Senators are going to be pretty contrarian tonight. They're going to be low owned. They're on a back-to-back, which doesn't really pump me up too much. The Rangers are coming off a terrible game. So, this game might be ugly. It could be a slate breaker. You just don't know. But from an interest standpoint, my interest is really low in this game. So let's move on to the second game of the night. We have the Dallas Stars traveling to Strong Island to face the Islanders. It's going to be Yaroslav Halak against Kari Lehtinen. So this is the only game on the slate that has a home team who is favored and has a 6 over-under. So I think there's going to be a lot of ownership on this game. The Islanders are a minus 125 favorite, which is small. But I think this is a good spot for them. Kari Lehtinen, he had a good game last time out. He is going for his 300th NHL win if you want to go down that narrative street. But I think, this is a game where you might see the second line of the Islanders be higher owned than the top line. So, I think the top line's always in play at home. I think this, I don't know if they're going to be contrarian, but this might be a good spot for them because I think people are just going to try to jam in Boston 1 and build around that, since that seems like, Boston is the heaviest favorite on the slate. Well, Nashville's a little bit heavier, but there's still questions about Johansson and Hartnell, but we'll get to that. So I'm interested in the top two lines. Dallas power play, they mixed up their power play lines. Now I forget what they are. But, Honka is back on the power play, which is nice. He's cheap. I don't like their even strength lines. The second line is the only full line that I really like. Jason Spezza, or Spiza, however you pronounce it, Matthias Janmark, and Radulov. Spiza is cheap, and he didn't, from a DFS perspective, he did nothing last game. He scored a shootout goal, but if you watch that game, every time he was on the ice, he dominated. He hit a post a couple times. I think you can go back there. I do like the mini of Jamie Benn and Radek Faksa. You can go there. Or if you just want to go to the power play, this is a short slate. You can power play. You can go, you got one of the stars beats. Whatchamacallit. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Janmark, Spiza, Rad, Klingberg, Honka, Pitlick. With a name his name is Pitlick. And then Ben, Hansel, Shore, Sagan, Lindell. So yeah, you can't even use Ben, Sagan, and Radulov together because they're on different power plays. The second line is together on the power play, so I think that's the line you really want to go for at even strength if you are going to go full line. Otherwise, I don't mind a Sagan Shore mini, even like a Sagan Ben Lindell power play exposure. And you never know with Ken Hitchcock, he can get pissed off 3 shifts into the game and completely mix up his lines. But yeah, for me, from an even strength standpoint, I'd go the Dallas 2, which is the Spiza line, and then I'd go with Ben Faksa, or whatever it is. I'm tired. But you know who I'm talking about. Who cares? My pronunciations are never going to get better. As long as the picks are good, you guys are going to be okay, I believe. And then, Sagan. I think there's going to be pretty good ownership on Sagan tonight, just from a single bullet standpoint. His line mates aren't great, but he is one of the better centers, if not the best center play tonight. So yeah. But the big thing, Honka versus Pulock. I think Honka is the better player. It depends on your build. If you're using the Stars, obviously go with Honka. If you're using the Islanders, go with Pulock. If you have neither, I probably go Honka. I also like Lindell. Obviously Klingberg is cheaper than Nick Leddy, and I much prefer Klingberg because spending up for Islanders defensemen is kind of like, I don't know. I don't have a really good analogy, but it's not fun. I like Calvin DeHaan too. I know he doesn't see too much power play time, but Calvin DeHaan's my buddy. On the Islanders side, I think people are going to flock to the second line. I'll get to the goalies in a second. People are going to flock to the second line, Barzell, Eberle, and Ladd, because it helps you fit in a Boston Juan. And I have no issue with the second line at all. I think, no matter what the matchup is 5-on-5, the second line Islanders is going to be favored because Barzal is a stud. He's amazing to watch. But if, the second line of the Islanders is going to be chalky, I'm probably going to go to the first line. Use Tavares, Lee, and Bailey. Fade chalk Boston 1 and go to a different line there. I have a feeling, Boston is going to be the heaviest owned line of the night just because they're playing the Red Wings, who perceived bad team. But, the Bergeron line is going to get Franz Nielsen, and, they're no picnic defensively. So we'll get to that game in a second, though. I think you can Josh stack Isles for sure. If you want to go 5-man, 5 skaters, I think you can leave Ladd off the second line and use a, Leddy would be the power play correlated defenseman there. I think Boychuk is still out, so if you want to punt, you can use Pulak, but, because Barzal is on the top power play unit as well, so I think, Leddy makes sense from that standpoint. Goalies in this game, if you can fit them, do it. I mean, that's a lot of power right there. But Lettinen, in a 6 over/under, it does worry me a little bit. Islanders at home are dangerous. I think I'm going to fade Lettinen. Halak interests me a little bit in GPPs. He had a really good game last time out. I don't really like the Dallas lines at even strength. I think Halak's going to be pretty low owned. I think people are going to spend up for Rene tonight. They're going to maybe use Tuca as well. So, I think Halak is going to be a little bit under the radar. He may be. I don't even know. I think he lost 78 games last year. Not really, but I think, he's a better goalie than Antti Niemi. We'll just leave it at that. But 299 and 233, yeah, he's been around. I think, you can use Halak in GPPs. He might go overlooked a bit for, possibly good reason. It is a 6 over/under. But if you are using a bunch of Isles, Halak makes sense. So let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the Boston Bruins traveling to Detroit to face the Red Wings. It's going to be Tuukka Rask against, I would assume, Jimmy Howard. Nothing's been confirmed yet. This is a 5.5 over/under. I think the chalk of the night is going to be Boston 1, Pastrnak, Marchand, and Bergeron. It is the Red Wings. They aren't very good defensively, but they do get Franz Nielsen. It is going to be a hard match there. Franz Nielsen is the best defensive line on Detroit. So, are they a shutdown line? No. But they are the best defensive line on Detroit. I still think, there's absolute merit to using Boston 1 tonight. I think a lot of people will. They're going to jam him in. They're going to try to get him in with the Islanders' second line, maybe even the Sedins and Besser, maybe like a Rangers depth line. For me, I have no issues with the top line. I even like the second line as well. Krejci, DeBrusk, and Bjork. But for me, I think the line that I'm targeting in this game is the third line for Boston: Riley Nash, Danton Heinen, and David Backes. They are going to get a much better matchup at even strength. The Red Wings, are not good defensively. Their best defenseman is Mike Green, who's a road cone. They have Cronwall, who is the roadiest of all road cones, who makes Mike Green look like a serviceable defenseman. Danny the Kaiser's terrible. Trevor Daley's just an offensive defenseman. So I think, for me, if I'm going to pivot off the chalk, I think the third line of Boston. The depth lines of Boston tonight are definitely in play. Lines 2 and 3. I think that makes sense to pivot off the chalk. Obviously, Boston 1 is the top play of the night, and I think a lot of people are going to go there. I'm just giving you different options on how to be contrarian in a Well, I know you're building 150 lineups. How much exposure to David Backus will I have? Well, first of all, I'm not building 150 lineups. I probably had 25-30% Bacchus, their testosterone. I think it's a nice pivot off the chalk of Boston 1. Tom Wilson's not playing, so I'm surprised you're tuning in, but we're pals, right? I still haven't popped on your Twitch feed yet, but I will. I will. For the defenseman, if you're going to use, the top line, I think Krug or McAvoy are the choices there. If you're using a depth line, I'd go McAvoy over Krug. On the Detroit side, I think the line that I would want exposure to is Larkin, Mantha, and Tatar. If you want to leave Tatar off, okay, go Larkin, Mantha. With Mike Green, I think that is acceptable as well. I'm just kidding, testosterone. You're one of the best players. I just like busting if that's really you. So yeah, Larkin, Mantha, Tatar would be my top target for Detroit tonight. They're going to avoid Bergeron. So, the Nielsen line is out for me because they're facing Bergeron. So even, the top line as well, Zetterberg, Nyquist, and Abdelkader. I'm not a huge Abdelkader guy at all, but he is 3,500. So that line overall is really cheap. It does let you, game stack with Boston 1 if you want, or fit in the top line of the Islanders. In net tonight, I think Tuukka Rask is going to be a popular play at 8,100. I think he's definitely in play in GPPs. I don't think there is a goalie that is a must fade tonight. There's nothing outlandish, that makes me want to fade anyone. But maybe the most fadeable goalie tonight could be the Detroit goalie. I don't know, because he is going to be the lowest owned. If it's Howard or Mrazek, they are 7,100. I don't think it's really leveraging the field using the Detroit goalie. It's Howard. But if you want to get a really low-owned goalie who's going to see a bunch of shots and theoretically has a chance to win, maybe you can use Howard. It's not something I'm going to do. I'm probably going to be looking elsewhere, but it is 8 goalies in play tonight, and you have to use somebody. And I'm not a big guy. I'm not a big spend-up guy. Goalie Rask is over 8,000. He's 8,100. So Jimmy Howard could be in play in GPPs. It's a risky proposition, but he is probably going to be the lowest owned goalie on the slate between Howard and Anders Nielsen. So let's move on to the late game tonight. We have the Nashville Predators traveling to Vancouver to face the Canucks. It's probably going to be Pekka Rinne, 8,400 Pekka Rinne against Anders Nielsen. Ryan Johansson and Scott Hartnell skated this morning. There's still game time decisions. They did line rushes with them in. They didn't reunite the top line, but there's still game time decisions, so I don't know what the lines are going to look like if one or both are still out. You'd have to assume they're going to go back to what they had. Brock Besser is with the Sedins. I think that line is in play tonight from Vancouver. True, they do play Edmonton tomorrow, so I would assume it's going to be Rinne. And I would assume, Saros is going to start against Edmonton tomorrow, but you never know. Either way, they're both over 8,000, but we'll see. But that's because they play tomorrow and they haven't announced the goalie, this could be a decent spot. So if Saros gets announced at like 9:40, I think he might, possibly be low owned because people are going to, not want to have an unconfirmed goalie, an 8,400 unconfirmed goalie in their lineup. So, I mean, he could be lower owned tonight in a favorable matchup. You know, the Canucks are banged up really bad, but, you know, the Sedins with Besser is in play. Henrik Sedin is 3,500. He's on pace for like 60 shots on the season, which is insane. That's so low. Daniel Sedin is 3,700 and Besser is 6,200. You know, Besser's been incredible. They're going to see, I don't even know what line they're going to see. I don't know how Vancouver is really going to match up. With Nashville being a mess, I kind of not really sure how I want to attack them. I might, Turris, Smith, and Fiala are definitely going to stay together, and I think that is the safest bet. But again, like with the lines being mixed up, if you do have Nashville in the lineup and, someone gets, Johansson's back or Hartnell's back, but Johansson's not, they could be mixing up their lines. So I'm not sure how many people are really going to have a lot of Nashville tonight. I think it's a spot, even though they're heavily favored, that there is some uncertainty. It is the only late game, so you could be getting like a Forsberg at a little bit lower, Arvidsson a little bit lower owned. But the line that's intact, Turris, Smith, and Fiala, they're probably going to have a pretty decent amount of ownership tonight. This is a favorable matchup for Nashville. I wish it was Jacob Markstrom at home, but Anders Nielsen in net at 7,200 doesn't really excite me. I think you can use them in GPPs if you're using Vancouver, especially with the uncertainty with Nashville. But Nashville's definitely the better team. Again, I'm not a huge guy I'm not a huge Nashville on the road guy. I much prefer to use them at home. That's not to say that they can't win on the road. They're a very good team. They're going to have a deep playoff run. So obviously they're going to have to win games on the road. But when I'm stacking Nashville, I much prefer to use them at home. But Yossi's definitely in play, 6,800. Subban is in play, 5,200. Ekholm being over 5,000, the interest is lower, but you can use him. On the Vancouver side, I think Edler at 4,200 and Delzato and Pouliot. Boston and New York Islanders almost never change their lines. So Nashville's in a weird spot because of the injuries. I think for that reason, it's a good GPP play, just because there's uncertainty surrounding their goalie and their lines. You might get them at a little lower ownership, especially if I don't know. I don't even know what the lines are projected to be. I think Forsberg's still with Bonino and Aberg or something like that, or Yarncroke. So other than the Turris line, the other three lines are up in the air, so it remains to be seen. So if you are throwing a ton of lineups tonight, it would behoove you to have some put aside with some non-Turris Nashville lines, and when the lines do come out, pop those in there if you're interested in them. I think you can get them at lower ownership than expected. Pecorino, if he's confirmed at 8,400, it's going to be popular. It's probably going to be the cash game play. Him and Tuukka Rask. That's really pricey for me. It's hard. It's going to be hard to fit Rene with Boston 1 for sure. I'd much prefer to use Rene in cash than in GPPs, but again, short slate, anything is possible. Yeah. That could change, though, with Ryan Johansson back. Yeah, but I don't know why they put Bonino and Johansson together. So we'll have to wait and see. I think those lines change if both those guys are back. I think, but again, it's in a wait and see, and it's the late game, so I think there's an edge there. I don't think people truly use late swap appropriately, so there could be an edge in using Nashville tonight. So that is the 4-game slate. If you guys have any questions, fire away. DK is late swap. So is FanDuel, I believe. Just not in NBA, which they're not bringing back this year anyway. Nothing. Straightforward 4-game slate for y'all. No, I said people don't really know how to use late swap appropriately. I think it goes underutilized. But that's a strategy pod or article for another day. I didn't do too well last night. I didn't have enough. Chicago won. I had DeBrincat. I went all in on Minnesota, which hindsight's 2020. I should have went all in on Chicago. Nice. Top 3 GPP goalies. Man, that's a tough question. I think from a popularity standpoint, I think it's going to go Rinne, Rask, Hank. I kind of like Halak tonight, which is scary. None of these goalies like really go, oh yeah, sweet, I want to play you. But kind of like have a hunch about Halak. I'm not really sure why. If it is Saros, I do like him as well. I'm a big Saros guy. The problem he has is he's small. And if his positioning is off a little bit, he's going to get lit up. But I do like Saros, especially if he's a late confirm, which Nashville goalies always are. Anders, maybe. I'm leaning towards Halak right now, which is kind of horrifying, to be honest with you. But I don't like spending over $8,000 for a goalie. It's a hard line in the sand that I take. I just don't think there's value at taking an $8,400 goalie. But, I understand wanting to use Pekka Rinne tonight. I understand wanting to use Rask tonight, of course. It's just like, for the price, if they don't get a shutout, it's not going to pay off. But on a short slate, you got to get the goalie right to win. So I understand wanting to use Rinne, Rask, Hank, people like that. I'm not going to talk you out of it. I think that's going to be a good contrarian option on this 4-game slate. Best one-off center for tonight. I think Sagan is going to be popular. He is the most expensive. I think this is a really good spot for Tavares too. I'm kind of hoping the top line for Islanders goes overlooked a little bit because people will be drawn to Boston 1 and the Islanders' second line. Yeah, I don't know. They kind of stuck together for the most part last game, but you never know with Hitchcock. Did the same thing in St. Louis. Ended up, getting Laterra out from being Tarasenko's center for like 4 shifts, and then they were back together. So that will wrap it up for today's Daily Fantasy Show. You want to get at me, you can get at me at Twitter, JRH002DFS. You can get at me in the DFO premium chat. It's a Slack. It's awesome. I will tell every You guys said hello. We still have all the cool premium features on Daily Face-Off. We have the optimizer for cash, optimizer for GPP, projections for both, 80s line matching article, which is gold, and you get the premium chat, which is cool. A whole bunch of us who go over lineups and stuff before lock, tilt the slate during. It's a lot of fun. So I'll be back tomorrow for a larger Thursday slate. I'll have an article as well, and we'll see you tomorrow. Good luck, everybody.